Hello, and thank you for making the Integrity Sports Podcast a part of your weekly routine. Our show is brought to you each week by our friends at Harper's Tree and Stump Removal. If you have any tree trimming, tree removal, or stump removal needs, Harper's Tree and Stump Removal has you covered. In addition to their tree work, they also haul rock and sand. They can do driveway work, and they can now do horizontal grindings of large wood debris piles. Give Keith a call at 229-314-2048 or at 229-938-2412. Harper's Tree and Stump Removal is the proud premier sponsor of the Integrity Sports Podcast.
Welcome to the Integrity Sports Podcast, covering local sports in the Southwest Georgia area, creating content that is factual, positive, and informative, promoting efforts by athletes, coaches, and sports administrators. Now, here's your host, Tim Estes.
Welcome into this week's episode of the Integrity Sports Podcast. Our program is available each week on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, X, and several other social media and podcast platforms. Remember to like and share this video with your friends. And if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure and hit the subscribe button. We are trying to reach the 1,000 subscriber mark before football season starts next fall. So help us out with that. Hey, we've got a great show lined up for you today. Our guest today is a native of Americus and is now the team chaplain for the Auburn swim and dive program, Mr. Mike Turner. Mike, glad to have you with me.
Hey, Tim, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate the invite so much, buddy.
Mike, before we get into the questions I've got prepared for you today, I just want to kind of encourage you and let you know that the folks here in Americus and Southwest Georgia really do remember you and remember you fondly. I've had several, I would say close to a dozen people reach out to me today when they saw our teaser that you were going to be our guest on the show tonight. And several of them have made really positive comments. So I hope you know you're still well liked in our area.
Oh, man, I appreciate that. I always need all the encouragement I can get. That's good stuff.
Well, Mike, before we get into what you're doing now, I'd like you to briefly kind of go through your story of growing up here in Americus and what that was like, and the road that you went down kind of as a teenager and a young adult. Because, man, I think you've got a strong testimony of the person you are today, and just kind of give us that story.
Yes, sir. Yeah, absolutely. Again, Tim, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it so much. Yeah, I grew up on a farm about halfway between Dawson and Americus. We called it the 17th. You probably know where that's at. Chapel's Groceries right there on the corner. And my dad worked at Shivers Lumber Company. And so I was a country boy growing up, and I always said if my grandfather, had lived a long life, I'd have probably wound up being a farmer because I literally went everywhere he did when I was a kid. But we moved to Americus, moved to town, we said, when I was around 12 years old. And so right along in there is the, kind of the time when I started, getting a little curious and kind of, as a young preteen, what have you, had a lot more options when we moved to Americus than I did actually on the farm. So unfortunately, my first, I guess experiences was kind of hunting trouble,
Yeah.
And, typical kid, just kind of experimenting, wanting to be popular. Peer pressure was a big term back in my day. And so I took my first drink when I was 14 years old. And,
Wow.
Really, if I had to say what my motivation was, I think it was just to be, try to be cool. I just kind of wanted to be, I guess, popular or, whatever the thing you want to say. But that's what I really look back on now and think that's what kind of motivated me to do that. And of course, that led to me being pretty much a drunk for 20 years, from age 14 to age 34. And when I look back on it now, at age 14, when I started drinking, my grades started to decline. I loved sports as a kid, but really I had no, I guess, motivation after I started doing all this kind of promiscuous activity. I had no motivation really to excel in those areas. I played on, obviously sports teams growing up because my dad basically made me do it. And
Yeah.
I did love it, and I'm thankful for the experience that I got back then. But I wish, looking back now, that I had not squandered that opportunity. But um, so graduated from Southland Academy in 1983. Shout out to all my classmates there. So in '83, then went on to Georgia Southwestern and started college there. Ended up dropping out just because of my grades. And again, the drinking just kept taking a toll on me. Joined a fraternity, had a great opportunity there to become a Pi Cap, and so I would not trade those friendships for anything. In fact, all of them pretty much have become lifelong friends of mine now. Still keep in touch with them, love them dearly
Yeah.
today.
Many of them are the folks that reached out to me today.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. Yeah. So would not trade that experience for anything. And then I'd say probably around right around age 32 ish. I interviewed for this job in Phoenix, Arizona, Tom Hopkins International. I had been in sales. I found that I could make a good bit of money there, had a sales aptitude, and had been mentored by several people that kind of helped me along the way. And somehow got my life together enough to memorize this like 56-page presentation to get this like sales trainer position so I could travel the country and speak. And that's what I really had always wanted to do. And so somehow I was able to focus and get that done, got over the finish line. And right along that time actually is about probably when Ted was playing baseball. I know you mentioned,
Yeah.
that Ted had played for the Travelers, and that's your connection with us, and so, but anyway, so around age 34, after about 2 years, traveling and just having the time of my life, it finally caught up with me in Seattle, Washington. I went in to speak at a breakfast meeting. The thing to do back in those days, businesses had expense accounts. And so I was the speaker guy. So
Yeah.
everybody wants to go out and have a few drinks with the speaker.
Yeah.
And so we would go out, have a few drinks or whatever. And of course, if you have drank that long and alcohol is all, kind of always in your system, then it's kind of coming out of your pores. 24 hours a day, your liver just can't catch up and process it all out and metabolize it. And so I smelled like, your average bum, to be honest with you. That was just dressed in a suit and wore a lot of cologne. And so I went into this breakfast meeting and somebody kind of ratted me out. They called the home office. And the next morning, I was like on this stage in a civic center doing the morning session for Tom Hopkins. And when I came down at 11 o'clock down the stairs, my boss was standing at the bottom. And I remember freaking out because I didn't know why he was there. He had flown from Phoenix basically to terminate me.
Wow.
And that series of events is basically what was the catalyst to, me coming to know the Lord. I moved home for probably about a month, and one of my ex managers there, field managers, he had helped me get a job regionally, so I was going to start doing training for a company in Macon. And right along during that time when I moved, I had told my mom, I'm like, it's time for me to turn over a new leaf. It's just time for me to quit drinking. I've got to just go get my life together. So
Right.
I did. I was going to, Mike was going to do it. I was going to start over. And so I got moved into my apartment in Macon, and about probably 3 weeks went by. And on a Friday afternoon, I drove to Americas for the weekend and stopped and got a 6-pack of beer somewhere around Montezuma. And it was over back in those days for me. Once I got one beer in me, it was done. It was like a 4-day binge.
Yeah.
And so Sunday, basically, I've stayed drunk all weekend. Sunday morning, I woke up at someone's house in Americus, Georgia. I have no idea how I got there. Car was running, door was open. I'm in the driver's seat, air conditioner's wide open, and I have no idea to this day how in the world I actually got there. So I told my friend Chris Woolridge, who is Keith's cousin, by the way.
Yeah. I know Chris.
Yeah, so Chris was with me that afternoon after I was getting ready to leave, and he had a job interview on Monday morning in Atlanta, and he wanted to spend the night in Macon with me. And I said, okay, well, so on the way to my apartment in Macon, he's driving his car, I'm driving in mine, and I'm thinking, I'm a drunk. And when I start drinking, I can't stop. And the best thing that I could ever do is never start back again. And it was really it wasn't a voice, but it was like I kind of was wanting to say that. So you know how you'll kind of practice something in your mind before you
Yep.
sort of, you know, and I needed some courage. I didn't want that to kind of come out the wrong way. And so I was kind of rehearsing it. And when we got to my apartment, I said, man, I need to pour this 6-pack of beer out. I got to tell you this. And I said those words for the first time. I said, I'm a drunk. And when I start drinking, I cannot stop. And the best thing that I can ever do is to never start back again. And I got the words out the first time, poured the beer down the drain. That's the last time I ever saw a Miller Lite, which was, my basically drug of choice, I like to say, because I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like I would a bottle of water, And the next day, Chris went on to Atlanta, and I called my friend Mike Shadows, and I said, man, I told him the same thing. And it just felt so good, Tim. Like when I first started saying this, it just felt good to just get this weight off my chest, because I didn't really realize how much it had me bound up.
Yeah.
I knew that I was separate from my friends because, when your buddies start getting married and that kind of thing, and you're still the party animal, people kind of drift and they don't want to be around that kind of stuff anymore. So that had happened, but I really didn't have fellowship with any of these people. So I called Mike. Mike's like, man, I'm so glad you called me. I've worried about you for a lot of years, blah, blah, this and that. He said, why don't you just come down and hang out with me today? So I got in the car and drove to Americus. Well, when I got there, pull up at Carter's Fried Chicken, and I walked in his office in the back there.
Yeah.
And Mark Baker, who was the pastor at Central Baptist at the time, was sitting there in his office. And I remember thinking to myself, dude, like I just called you and you've already ratted me out with the pastor.
Yep.
And so I come in and come to find out later that was totally not even why Mark was there. That he just ate lunch there, frequently. And but we had a heart-to-heart talk, and he just said, man, Paul-in-law, Brother Hugh DeLoach,
Yeah.
he's helped me out a lot in life. And he said, if you need any advice or, you just need some help, you need to go by and see him. And so sorry, I get a little choked up about a
No,
week,
go ahead.
about a week went by, and I was going to Floyd's that night. I was planning on going and getting drunk with a bunch of buddies. And I said, well, I'm going to stop by and see Brother Hugh and get some religious counseling. That's in my mind, that's what I was going in to do. It's on October 28th, 1999. I won't ever forget it. And so I went in there, and Brother Hugh, and I just love him to death, just respect him so much. I heard a pastor tell me a similar story to mine, which really freaked me out, because I always thought growing up, that pastors, like, they had it all together.
Yeah. They don't make any mistakes, is what you think in your mind.
And I mean, I was raised in church, so I always had great respect for the pastor, that type of thing. And, Brother Hugh just is very candid with me, man. He shared his testimony with me. And when he got done, I got up to leave. I basically got up out of the chair, and I was making my way to the door, and he told me to sit back down. And man, I used to have a chip about that big, Tim, on my shoulder right there, and
Yeah.
I remember thinking to myself, man, who are you to tell me to sit back down, but I did. Out of respect for him, I sat back down, and he said, Mike, I can't make you accept Jesus today, but it's fair, because I've shared with you the truth of the Word of God, to ask you what your response is. And he said, based on what you told me, you're living a life of rejection, which means that you're rejecting Christ and what he did for you at the cross. And he said, the prayer of rejection goes something like this. And I don't know, Tim, he got about 3 rejections in, and I kind of stopped that prayer. I'm like, nah, that don't sound good.
Yep.
And so long story short, man, I prayed to receive Christ there in his office. And I won't ever forget when I got done praying, he looked at me and he said, now I got somebody I want you to go see. And I'm like, okay, well, who is it? He said, well, my son-in-law, who I led to Christ, or who I married in this church 12 years ago, I was in the wedding.
Yeah.
He said, to my knowledge, I've never heard him pray out loud for anybody, but he came forward in a Pray Your Friends to Christ service about a
Wow.
week ago, and asked our church to pray for you. And that kind of hit me now.
Yeah.
Like everything up to this point, it wasn't coincidental to me by any stretch, but like the light switch really flipped on when he said that to me, you know, and I was like, oh, like God's been like, God set this up,
Yeah.
kind of a thing. And like, it really clicked with me then. And he said, he asked us to pray. We specifically called your name and prayed for your salvation. And he said, I want you to go see him. So it was literally the day of the pet parade, downtown
Oh,
Americus.
yeah.
Okay. So I got to Carter's, and all the wives and kids, all the Shadows clan is there, and all the kids are there. And I'm like, Brother Hugh must have got on the phone and called everybody,
Yeah.
And finally, this wretch, Mike Turner, came to the Lord. Y'all need to get together and rally around him, And but it was just so cool. It was just totally organic. They were all getting ready to go to the parade, and I just remember, really celebrating that day. And then, of course, I made my profession of faith on Halloween. It happened to fall on Sunday that year, so October 31st. I don't even remember what the preacher preached on that day. All I remember is I was sitting on about the 11th row, and I couldn't wait for him to get done talking so I could just hit the aisle.
Yeah.
And go to the altar. And but so much weight came off of me that day. And Alfred Dupree, I remember sitting there was a lot of people at church that day, Tim, and I remember thinking, when you first get saved, it's like, man, I wonder who's going to come up to me and say, hey, it's about time.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And in your mind, you're thinking, I wonder who here's going to give me a lecture now, and so of all people, Mr. Dupree, he worked with Daddy for a long time at Shivers, and I remember seeing him come down through the line. They were coming by and shaking my hand, and just kind of loving on me at church. And Mr. Alfred got down there, and I remember thinking to myself, well, if anybody knows me inside and out, man, Mr. Alfred's about to give me a good old lecture down here at the altar, and big old alligator tears. And he gave me a big old hug, and he said, Mike, Jesus will make a man out of you.
Wow.
And so I'm still on my way to that happening, but the Lord just set me free, Tim. I mean, He has met me at every place, every weak spot in my life, and I've had other struggles, but God just delivered me from just like what some people spend the rest of their life trying to overcome,
Yeah.
And I
Well,
don't
you
say
know
that.
what, Mike? We could stop this podcast right now, and this would be probably the most powerful episode we've ever had just based on that testimony.
Wow.
But I do want to get to a couple of other things that I hope you'll inform us about. You mentioned your brother Ted. He played with me back years ago, and always liked Ted. And a few months ago, he reached out to me and said, I'm trying to do this podcast. Can you help me out? Now I've been a guest on his show. He's been a guest on my show.
Yeah.
I went to school. I'm about the same age as your sister, Michelle. Just briefly tell us about what they're doing now so that the folks here in our area will know where they're at and what they're doing.
Yeah, so Michelle's a new grandmother, and I'm a new great uncle, and so that's cool. Madison, my niece, just had their first child, and so that's cool. And Michelle's a nurse. She's worked home health care a lot over the years. They live in Clearwater, Florida. And of course, my brother Ted moved to Clearwater, subsequent to her, just a few years really after. And so both of them and their families live there in Clearwater. They're raising their family there. And of course, as you know, Ted works for Chick-fil-A. And I'm just so proud of Ted, and how, that's just a whole other story, how Ted came to know the Lord, and just how God's just blessed him, and it's just been awesome to see. But they're doing great. We visit Americus occasionally. We don't. All three of us would say we don't get together nearly as much as we would like to. But Americus, of course, will always be home for us. We love Americus, Georgia. So, yeah.
Well, Mike mentioned Mike Shadows. That's a good lead in. He's our sponsor at Carter's Fried Chicken this week. They're located at 206 Tripp Street in Americus. They offer breakfast, lunch, and supper. Mike would love for you to come by and see him or his staff. They've been feeding our local people here for over 30 years. They offer lunch specials every day with chicken, pork chops, and vegetables, and they do it all at an affordable price. Thanks to Carter's Fried Chicken for being a 2025 sponsor of the Integrity Sports Podcast. We're talking with Mike Turner. He's one of the chaplains at the Auburn Athletic Department. Mike, as a big Auburn fan myself, I think it's really cool that you're getting to impact the lives of some young athletes over on the Plains. Tell us a little bit about Auburn and what you do there, not just with the Auburn swim and dive team, but I understand you've got an organization called YoungEagle.org, and you're involved in a few other things. Fill us in on that.
Yeah, so a couple of years back, got an opportunity through a friend of mine named Scott Shepard. I was mentoring his teenage son, Jackson, and he and I were just talking one day, and he's like, "You need to meet my dad." And I said, "Well, what does he do?" And he said, "He's the baseball chaplain at Auburn." And I'm like, "Yeah, that would probably make good sense. We need to meet him, you know." So
Yeah.
Scott invited me to come on Auburn's campus to do ministry, and basically what you have, Tim, is you got a lot of different pockets of ministry on a big college campus like Auburn. You have FCA that everybody's familiar with. You got Nations of Coaches that sponsors, you know, team chaplains. And you have Athletes in Action, which is a big organization through Campus Crusade for Christ and Bill Bright's organization there. So all these different pockets of ministry. And so my organization, Young Eagle, basically, if we started that nonprofit back in 2003, and I've used it a little bit over the years as I've done intentional interim pastorates and done the work of an evangelist. So I've raised support at different times. And so that website's just always been there. And so that vision has just kind of carried forward that common theme of, you know, me being able to exercise my evangelistic gifts and passions there and serving churches as an intentional interim prior to coming on board at Auburn. And then what I get to do now is I just get to mentor college athletes, which is amazing because, you know, as you know, athletes pretty much lead the way on any campus. And so we get to kind of be like behind the scenes, like we get, you know, favor and access. And we're just so blessed to have coaches and staff members that just they sort of figuratively hold the door open for us at Auburn. So it's just really been a big blessing to me. Pretty much go to practices, you know, an average day for me kind of looks like going to workouts. You know, I spend a lot of time on the pool deck, as we like to refer to it. So I'm the chaplain of the swim and dive team. So I have two different teams. It's basically an individual sport with a team goal, you know, as you know. And
Yeah.
so and then we've also experienced lately kind of a shakeup in the whole college community, NCAA. You know, they had this big lawsuit, and so a lot of your sports other than football, baseball, and basketball are taking a big hit because a lot of their budgets are being cut. And so we had about 40% of our team get cut all in one day here not too long ago. So
Oh, wow.
very, very tough, you know, loss. And so a lot of these athletes that I've become very close with, they're now, you know, relocating to other colleges, and, you know, praise God, they've got those opportunities there, and they've been, you know, placed in other areas so that they can still pursue the sport that they love. But yeah, it's been a tough time, but at the same time, Auburn's just a great place to do ministry. We're so thankful to be able to have the access that we have.
You know, one of the things that's really impressed me a lot about Auburn University, and I'm looking at the traditional sports, football, basketball, baseball. And you look at a guy like Hugh Freeze, who definitely had some very public problems that he has been very repentant of and is now just really openly sharing his faith. You've got Bruce Pearl, the men's basketball coach, who is really big on the Israel thing and his Jewish faith, but yet he allows his players to read the Bible, they went to Israel this past year and got to experience the Holy Lands. And he really promotes moral behavior and knowing the Bible. And then my friend Butch Thompson, who I've known for over 30 years, is such a solid Christian man that's leading that baseball program. It would be neat for me. You know, all these guys and the coaches of these other sports, but Mike, is it just my impression, or is it reality that Auburn's got a bunch of really solid, good, moral Christian coaches?
Yes, sir. You know, we get a sort of look behind the curtain, if you will. You know, people will say, you know, is this person the real deal? You know, even these like big name athletes and such. And I don't know Hugh Freeze, for example, personally, but I know the impact he's made on his team and his players here. I have that firsthand knowledge of the fact that, I mean, Hugh Freeze preaches the gospel during his, you know, briefing sessions. I mean, he's got I mean, you can listen to one of his messages. I mean, you get just as good a message down at any ABC church on Sunday morning. I mean, he really lays it out, and I think, probably, just candidly looking at his life from a distance, probably all those hardships he went through, God has used that to kind of pour him out now. As broken bread and poured out wine, the scripture says, and he's really ministering at that level. He's got a new chaplain named Mike Blanc, as you know. Longtime chaplain Chet Williams passed away recently, and Mike Blanc was a part of his ministry, so that's going to carry on nicely, and Mike's going to be working with us as well. But then you have Bruce Pearl. I mean, absolutely passionate. My friend Jeremy Napier is over there at basketball, and these guys all come to our leadership with Team United, another part of ministry that we do together. So we see people like Dylan Cardwell, for example. Yeah, we call Big Dylan Disciple Dill, and man, he's just a humble guy, loves the Lord, just very genuine. So you get to kind of interact with all these guys. And then you mentioned Butch Thompson. Man, I tell you, Coach Thompson's just awesome. He loves to give away Bibles to student athletes. And so the swim and dive team has never had a chaplain before. And most swim and dive teams really don't. In the South, you got a baseball chaplain, or you may have a football chaplain that, in high school you're familiar with, but not swim and dive teams, for example. But Coach Thompson, man, he's like, Mike, anytime, you have a student athlete needs a Bible, man, call me. I'd love to be able to present it to them. So literally this year, we probably had 25 or 30 people, and I would just text Coach, and he'd say, like, all right, yeah, come by around 11 o'clock, so I'd meet, my athlete over there, my friends or whatever. We go into the Butch's office, and he'd take just a few minutes and kind of personalize it and write his favorite verse in the Bible. And it's just cool to see, man, behind the scenes, that these guys are the real deal, and they truly care about their players, their athletes. They really care about them, and I think that's what makes Auburn such a special place.
Our final sponsor for today's show is another friend of our guest, Mike Turner. That's Marty McDonald at the Marty McDonald State Farm Insurance Agency. He's located at 925 Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. Drop by and see Marty, Mary Lynn, or any of their fine staff, and let them discuss your insurance needs with you. You can reach Marty at 928-3686, or you can look them up on Facebook. They can even do the discount double check to make sure you're receiving all of the savings that are available to you. Thanks again to Marty McDonald State Farm for sponsoring this segment of the Integrity Sports Podcast. And like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Mike, I understand that you've kind of got some plans or some thoughts in your head to kind of go the podcast route yourself here in the next few months. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yes, sir. So I'm hearing you. I love your model of having sponsors for your broadcast. So I started doing a thing called the Daily Dose. I don't know if you've seen any of them or not, but it's basically about a 2-minute devotion. And so I started doing that about a month and a half ago. And then kind of in the middle of that, I had been praying about raising support because, I pastored churches, and typically, you have a salary when you do that. And so I had a financial piece that I was kind of looking to fill in. I didn't really know how I was going to do that. And so being on campus at Auburn, I've been around other chaplains who have, followed that same route, and they've raised support for their ministry. And so I paused it in the beginning because I didn't want to kind of be out there and doing a podcast, and it sounded like I was asking for donations all the time. And so it's just been kind of a time that I had to go through and really prayerfully sort that out and how God wanted me to approach it. We partnered with EquipNet, who handles all of our nonprofit management, and so that we can receive tax-deductible donations and that type of thing. And then what we want to do is we want to do a very similar program to what you have, and we just want to focus on putting the spotlight on student athletes and allowing them to tell their story. So we want to help them to tell their story about how they met Jesus and how it's impacted, their journey as a student athlete. And, just pretty much in the I guess you'd say the filler spots, I probably eventually want to post 2 times a week rather than 1, and do that in just such a way that I would just do like a Bible teaching similar to like a Wednesday night Bible study or something like that. So that's kind of the format in the beginning. And then, wherever God wants to take it from there. But that's kind of the idea. And that was also the reason for the pause. I actually would have already been doing this had I not had to kind of stop and kind of make these contacts. I've been working with several people who are kind of training me on how to do this and how to approach people to teach them about what I do. and to ask them to partner with me. So it's kind of been a journey.
Absolutely. We want to be a part of that. And when you get it fully up and running, let us know. We'll pass that along to our audience as well. Mike, every week when I wrap this podcast episode up, the last question I ask my guest is always the same. And it's been a big hit. Our fans like to hear this. Even with what you do being a passion, I know there's got to be times where it's a real grind. And you've got to have some folks behind the scenes that are your support network that lift you up and encourage you. Tell us who those folks are for Mike Turner.
Yeah, absolutely. First person that comes to mind is my brother Ted. Ted and I are closer now than we've ever been in our entire adult lives. And so he just is a constant encouragement to me. We talk a lot. Obviously, we spend a lot of time doing really this same thing that we're doing tonight. So we'll just get on FaceTime sometimes and just banter back and forth. But he's a great encouragement to me, great prayer partner. He's always in my corner and helps pick me up when I'm down. And then the second person that comes to mind is my friend Scott Shepard. And then I can name countless others that are part of our chaplains group. We have a prayer meeting once a week, and that fellowship is priceless to me. But those two, really, Scott and my brother Ted, are really my go-tos, and they really are my kind of day one people when it just comes to my day-to-day. Now, there are tons of others, of course. We all have a network of people that we love and who encourage us. And I'm so thankful to hear the positive feedback you've gotten. I would have never expected that, by the way. But anyway, it's good to hear. But those two are really my tops.
I know one of the places you pastored while you were in this area was up in the Taylor County area. And my co-host during football season, when we do this podcast live, is a gentleman by the name of Scott Westbrook. And Scott reached out to me today and said, "Hey, I saw where you're going to have Mike Turner on. Make sure and mention me on the air and tell him I miss him." So Scott Westbrook sends his regards to you.
Big Scott. Hey, something real quick, man. Scott takes up the offering at church. You ever remember those old changers you could wear on your belt?
I do.
You know what I'm talking about? Oh, Scott, man, I preached at a service in Butler. I was up there. He walked around, man. He was taking up the offering. He was making change for people. He was jingling that thing. He's just a trip. I love Scott.
He is a genuine, he's a genuine comedian. Mike, this has been a lot of fun. Man, I have enjoyed this. Good reconnecting with you. I want to thank you for being a guest with me today on the Integrity Sports Podcast. I hope you know how proud people are of what you have become and what you're doing in your ministry there. Man, War Eagle, and keep up the good work, my friend.
War Eagle, Tim, thank you so much for having me.
And we want to thank you for making the Integrity Sports Podcast a part of your weekly routine. We are available once again on Facebook, X, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We also want to thank our sponsors, Harper's Tree and Stump Removal, Carter's Fried Chicken, and Marty McDonald State Farm. Remember to like and share this video. We are getting over 3,500 views per week. We've done that now for about 16 straight weeks, and we appreciate you for watching. This has been fun. For my friend, Mike Turner, I'm Tim Estes. Thanks for watching. So long, everybody.